She was ready to say yes to the safest choice of her life, until a new student arrived at her school and brought back the one man she had spent years trying to forget. Before we continue, here's a small request. If you're enjoying this story, please like, follow, and subscribe to stay connected and never miss a new story. Forgotten Vows, Episode 1. When the Past Walked Through the School Gates. At 35, Claire Whitmore believed she had finally built the life she had always wanted. As the principal of Riverstone Preparatory Academy, she was admired for her discipline, fairness, and calm leadership. Every morning she arrived before sunrise, personally greeting teachers and making sure everything on campus ran smoothly. Students respected her because she was strict but never unfair, while the staff trusted her judgment completely. Claire's life revolved around routines, carefully planned schedules, and making sensible decisions. Years earlier, she had promised herself that she would never again allow emotions to control her future. That promise had shaped every part of the woman she had become. Outside of work, the only person who truly understood her quiet nature was Nathan Ellis, a successful architect she had been dating for 6 months. Nathan was thoughtful, patient, dependable, and everything Claire believed a good partner should be. Every Friday evening, they met at the same little cafe, before spending hours playing board games or talking about their week. They rarely argued because they always approached disagreements calmly, discussing every issue until they found common ground. Their relationship wasn't dramatic, but Claire liked it that way. It felt safe. It felt predictable. Most importantly, it felt nothing like the reckless romance she had experienced in her youth. On the evening of their 6-month anniversary, Nathan surprised Claire with a beautifully wrapped gift. Inside was a custom-made wooden nameplate engraved with the words, Principal Claire Whitmore. He smiled proudly and told her that she deserved every achievement she had earned through years of hard work. Then, after a brief pause, he admitted that he had been thinking a lot about their future together. Without directly asking the question, he hinted that perhaps before another year passed, they might be planning a wedding instead of another dating anniversary. Claire laughed softly and thanked him for the thoughtful gift, but deep inside, something unexpected happened. Instead of excitement, she felt uncertainty. Nathan was everything she had ever claimed to want in a partner, yet the thought of marriage made her strangely nervous. She couldn't explain why. The next morning, Riverstone Academy buzzed with excitement after rumors spread that Claire was being considered for a prestigious promotion within the school district. Teachers congratulated her in the hallways. Office staff whispered about the possibility of her becoming one of the youngest district directors in the state, and students greeted her with even greater respect than usual. Claire accepted every compliment politely, but her mind kept drifting back to Nathan's words from the night before. During the first class period, her assistant informed her that a recently transferred student named Owen Hayes had already been sent to the principal's office twice during his first week. According to several teachers, Owen constantly challenged classroom rules, interrupted lessons with sarcastic comments, and seemed unwilling to cooperate with anyone. Claire wasn't interested in making assumptions about a child she barely knew, but repeated incidents couldn't be ignored. She instructed her assistant to arrange a meeting with Owen's parent later that afternoon. Around lunchtime, Claire met 2 of her closest friends at their favorite cafe across the street from the school. As always, they immediately noticed something was bothering her. After some gentle encouragement, Claire admitted that Nathan's hints about marriage had left her feeling confused. She cared deeply for him and appreciated everything he did for her, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her wasn't completely ready. One friend suggested she simply ask Nathan what his intentions were instead of imagining every possible outcome. Another reminded her that love wasn't always supposed to feel perfectly logical. Claire smiled but insisted she would handle the situation rationally. Emotions, she believed, often caused people to make mistakes they later regretted. She had learned that lesson years ago and had no intention of repeating it. Returning to school, Claire prepared for the scheduled parent meeting. Expecting nothing more than another routine conversation, she reviewed Owen's disciplinary notes before asking her assistant to send the student's father into the office. A knock sounded at the door. Claire looked up, ready to introduce herself. The moment the door opened, the color drained from her face. Standing in front of her was Jack Hayes. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. They simply stared at each other, both equally shocked by the impossible coincidence. Jack finally broke the silence with an awkward smile, commenting that life certainly had a strange sense of humor. Claire forced herself to remain professional and invited him to sit down. Jack explained that he and Owen had recently moved back to Brookfield after accepting a new job opportunity. He hoped the relocation would give his son a fresh start after a difficult couple of years. Trying to lighten the mood, Jack joked that seeing Claire as a respected school principal was almost impossible to believe because, years ago, they had spent more time getting into trouble than following rules. Claire didn't smile. Instead, she immediately shifted the conversation to Owen's recent behavior. She explained that the boy had already received multiple disciplinary reports and appeared unwilling to respect classroom expectations. Jack listened carefully before calmly defending his son. He admitted Owen had struggled since the move, but insisted the boy wasn't naturally rebellious. According to Jack, changing schools, losing close friends, and adjusting to a completely new environment had been far harder than Owen wanted anyone to know. Claire acknowledged the explanation but maintained that every student had to follow the same standards regardless of personal circumstances. Jack accused her of judging his son too quickly, while Claire argued that he was making excuses instead of accepting responsibility. Their calm discussion gradually transformed into a familiar argument. Every sentence seemed to remind them of disagreements they thought had been left far behind. Eventually, Jack stood up and promised he would handle the situation with Owen himself before quietly leaving the office. After the door closed, Claire remained seated, unable to concentrate on the paperwork in front of her. Memories she had spent years burying suddenly returned with surprising clarity. That evening, her friends noticed she seemed unusually distracted. After much hesitation, Claire finally revealed the truth she had hidden for nearly 2 decades. When she was 18, she and Jack had been inseparable. They were adventurous, impulsive, and convinced they were mature enough to build a life together. Only weeks after graduating from high school, they secretly got married without telling most of their families. Reality arrived much sooner than either expected. Constant arguments, different ambitions, financial struggles, and youthful pride quickly destroyed the dream they believed would last forever. Their relationship collapsed almost as quickly as it had begun. Claire believed they had ended everything years ago and had spent the rest of her adult life becoming the exact opposite of the fearless teenager she once was. Seeing Jack again made her realize that while people can move forward, some memories never truly disappear. Meanwhile, Jack returned home and found Owen sitting alone on the porch, quietly wondering whether moving to Brookfield had been a mistake. Sitting beside his son, Jack promised that no matter how difficult the adjustment seemed, they would build a better future together. As father and son looked toward the setting sun, neither realized that the move meant much more than a new beginning. It had reopened a chapter of the past that both Claire and Jack believed had been closed forever, and neither of them was prepared for what would happen next. Sometimes the life we've carefully planned is interrupted by the unfinished story we thought had already ended. Claire believed she had buried her past forever, but the past had just walked back into her office, and this time, it wasn't leaving quietly. Continue episode 2. Claire thought seeing Jack again was the hardest part, but one unexpected conversation would make her question everything she believed she had left behind. Before we continue, here's a small request. If you're enjoying this story, please like, follow, and subscribe to stay connected and never miss a new story. Forgotten Vows, Episode 2, The Walls They Built. The morning after their uncomfortable meeting, Claire Whitmore arrived at Riverstone Preparatory Academy earlier than usual, hoping work would distract her from the flood of memories that had returned the day before. She reviewed lesson plans, signed administrative paperwork, and walked the hallways with her usual confidence. But every time she passed the principal's office, she remembered Jack Hayes sitting across from her desk. She was frustrated with herself. For years she had convinced herself that chapter of her life was completely over, yet one unexpected encounter had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Determined to regain control, Claire buried herself in school responsibilities. Meanwhile, Owen Hayes seemed to be making little effort to improve. During history class, he interrupted the teacher several times with sarcastic remarks, and later he skipped part of a group assignment, claiming he worked better alone. Although none of his actions were severe, the repeated incidents convinced Claire that another conversation with his father was necessary. Before arranging the meeting, she decided to observe Owen herself. From outside the classroom window, she noticed something different from the reports she had read. While Owen joked with classmates and acted confident whenever teachers were watching, he became unusually quiet whenever he thought no one was paying attention. At lunch, he sat with other students, but barely spoke, simply listening while everyone else laughed. Claire couldn't explain why, but the lonely expression on his face reminded her that written reports never told the whole story. That afternoon, Jack arrived at the school once again. This time the conversation started more calmly. Jack apologized for allowing their previous meeting to become personal and assured Claire he wanted to work with the school rather than against it. Claire accepted the apology and admitted she may have judged the situation too quickly. As they discussed Owen's behavior, Jack finally revealed what life had been like since the move. He explained that Owen's mother had accepted an executive position overseas nearly a year earlier. The demanding job kept her traveling constantly, and although she loved her son, canceled phone calls and missed visits had slowly left Owen feeling abandoned. Jack confessed that becoming both mother and father to a confused teenager had been far more difficult than he ever imagined. Some days he felt like he was failing, no matter how hard he tried. Hearing the honesty in his voice softened Claire's attitude. For the first time since seeing Jack again, she wasn't arguing with the reckless teenager she remembered. She was listening to a father doing everything possible to keep his family together. Claire suggested that instead of focusing only on punishment, they should encourage Owen to join one of the school's athletic programs where he could make friends and rebuild his confidence. Jack immediately agreed, grateful that someone was finally looking beyond his son's mistakes. As he prepared to leave, he smiled and thanked Claire for giving Owen another chance. Their conversation ended with genuine respect instead of frustration, leaving Claire unexpectedly relieved. Later that evening, Nathan invited Claire to their usual Friday game night. He noticed she seemed distracted and gently asked whether something had happened at school. Claire almost told him about meeting Jack again, but stopped herself. Instead, she simply mentioned that a difficult parent conference had occupied most of her week. Nathan didn't pressure her for details. He smiled, poured them both coffee, and suggested they forget about work for the evening. They laughed over their favorite board game, but Claire found herself unusually quiet. Nathan eventually noticed and asked if she wanted to call it an early night. She appreciated his understanding. Yet as she drove home, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something inside her had changed. It wasn't because she loved Nathan any less. It was because old questions she believed had been answered were suddenly demanding new attention. Across town, Jack sat on the front porch with Owen after dinner. Owen admitted that he missed his mother and sometimes wondered if she still thought about him as much as she promised she did. Jack assured his son that his mother loved him deeply, even if distance made it difficult to show. Then he made a promise of his own, that no matter what happened, he would never stop showing up for him. Owen smiled for the first time in days, and Jack silently hoped he was doing enough. The following Monday, Owen attended soccer tryouts after Claire personally recommended him to the coach. Although nervous at first, he quickly impressed everyone with his speed and determination. Watching from a distance, Claire saw a completely different side of the boy. He laughed with teammates, encouraged younger players, and celebrated every successful pass. She realized he hadn't needed harsher discipline. He had needed a place where he felt accepted. As practice ended, Jack arrived just in time to see Owen score the winning goal during a scrimmage. Father and son celebrated together while Claire quietly watched from the sidelines. Jack caught her eye and offered a grateful smile. Claire returned the smile before walking back toward the school building. She told herself she was simply happy that a student was finding his place. Yet deep down, she couldn't ignore one uncomfortable truth. Every conversation with Jack reminded her that the careless boy she had once known no longer existed. He had changed, and perhaps, without realizing it, she had begun changing again too. Sometimes people don't need someone to judge their mistakes. They need someone willing to understand the reasons behind them. As the sun slowly set over Riverstone Academy, Claire returned to her office with a calmer heart than she had expected. Helping Owen had reminded her that sometimes people deserve understanding before judgment. Jack left the school grateful that his son had finally been given a fair chance, while Claire quietly accepted that not every unexpected meeting has to reopen old wounds. For now, both of them chose to focus on their own responsibilities, believing they had handled the situation as mature adults. Life would continue as usual, and the difficult conversation that had once seemed impossible was finally behind them. With that, another ordinary day at Riverstone Academy came to a peaceful close. This is the end of the story.